Strange news, everyone. This week I've gone a little bit general. I seem to be on this kick of haunted locations, which I don't know why. It keeps coming up in my news feed, so I'm not too sure about that. But yeah, this week it's exactly that. Spooky Sites. 7 of the most haunted places in the United States. This is by Tom Metcalf of livescience.com. Very interested to see this list. I can see right at the top of it. It was one I know. So I'm going to go into this. Again, I haven't read this in advance. I want to be surprised along with everybody else. Paranormal Places. This is the most famous haunted house in Savannah, the Sorrel Weed House. Cool. I'm sure we'll get to that in a moment. You don't need to believe in ghosts to enjoy a ghost story. The tales that have grown over generations around reputedly haunted places can take on a fantastic life of their own in folklore, and the stories that surround a place can influence our experiences of them. All it takes is a creepy place, a touch of imagination, and a glimpse of something unexpected, only half seen, such as a ghost. So prepare to suspend your disbelief for the countdown of the history's 7 of the most haunted places in the United States. So they're only going to go in the history. I was hoping they would tell some ghost stories, but I guess we'll see. At Waverly Hills. Now, the funny thing is, I actually visited Louisville, and for some reason didn't really even realize to go to this place. Yeah, so I'm going to, it was built in 1910. I'm going to try and paraphrase most of this. This grim, bat-winged building is the archetype of a haunted hospital or insane asylum. Built in 1910 to treat victims of the White Plague of tuberculosis that was ravaging the country. At the time, there was no known cure. The disease was fatal. In some cases, doctors tried experimental methods to help ease the symptoms. This is where illicit medical experiments, in which the cure often proved as fatal as the disease. This is the scene of many deaths over the years. That's the thing with some of the older hospitals and asylums. Let's get rid of that. Hospitals and asylums is that you have the olden times, they didn't have as much compassion as they have today for these patients. And I covered on in an article, you just ignore that, Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, and then it's the American Horror Story Doctor. Let's see if I rank. There we go. It's pretty good, huh? Not too bad SEO going on there. So yeah, the fellow in American Horror Story, that's James Cromwell, the actor, was a real fella. So he did some of the original lobotomies on there's the actual guy. Kind of similar. No glasses, though. That's the actual guy, Freeman. And his most infamous patient was John F. Kennedy's sister, which led to the starting of the Special Olympics. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about that. So Rosemary Kennedy is who we're talking about. There's an actual photo of him performing his lobotomy through the nose of the patient. My God. And just look at how, like, they're just watching on, like, this is so curious. And I just assume they saw these patients as being less than human, which is very unfortunate. So yeah, you want to read this. It's on the Ghost Walks website. There's the title. You can search it. Yeah, so that kind of stuff happened at these hospitals. And I'm not going to read everything here. I just want to see if there's any ghostly claims. Thrill seekers and ghost hunters found their way inside the building, slamming doors and strange... It's a deserted building? When was this article written? 4 years ago. Is it still deserted? Let me know. They hear footsteps and screams of patients from empty rooms. Shadowy forms have been said to gather in the building's dark recesses and are said to follow visitors through narrow corridors. Imagine being in an abandoned building by yourself and having a shadow follow you. Phantom footsteps and voices repeatedly echo along the death tunnel or body chute. It's an underground tunnel that leads from the hospital to the railway tracks at the bottom of the hill to transport the dead away from the hospital where the living patients would not see them. I could see needing something like that. Several stories center on the 5th floor of the hospital where the tuberculosis patients with mental disturbances were reportedly treated. Room 502. There's always a room, right? Where 2 nurses are said to have killed themselves. One by hanging, the other by jumping to her death, is said to be haunted. No kidding. Some visitors claim to have seen mysterious shapes moving in the windows or have heard voices telling them to get out. Yeah. Savannah, Georgia. You know, I'm going to actually scroll down just to kind of see what's coming up. Okay, definitely. All right, so I'll do Savannah and then I'll skip down a bit. Savannah, Georgia, I've never been. Definitely on my bucket list of haunted places to go, along with Charleston, which would be wonderful because they're kind of close to each other, right? So, home to dozens of celebrated haunted houses and hundreds of ghost sightings. It's called the most haunted city in the United States. I'm sure there's some places that would disclaim that, such as Williamsburg, which I covered in a previous video. Ghost tour operators, of course, yeah, they would tell you that. Like Canada's most haunted town, Niagara-on-the-Lake, which, by the way, Canada's most haunted town. So yeah, cemetery, tangle of stone. Among the cemetery's resident ghosts, that's rare to have a ghost in a cemetery, is that of Gracie Watson, a 6-year-old who died of pneumonia in 1889. Her ghost is said to haunt the life-size statue that stands over her grave. That must be it right there. Which, like several other statues in the cemetery, I'm not even trying, are sometimes said to move as if they were alive. The sounds of children playing or crying is sometimes heard nearby. I don't know about statue stories of, I guess, like an energy, an astral version, which is a similar story I tell on the Ruthven tour out of Cayuga, Ontario. It was more of an astral version. It's not the actual stone that's moving. They should make that clear. The Hampton Lily Bridge House, 1797. That's good history. Despite the discovery of a mysterious crypt beneath the new property, they relocated it, so which has never been opened. Since then, no fewer than 26 families who have lived in the house have complained of various ghostly going-ons that have forced them to move out. These strange encounters include furniture moving around and doors locking themselves. Imagine you're on the outside when that happens. You just took the garbage out in your robe. That would suck. Most famous haunted house in Savannah, Sorrel Weed House, appears in the opening shots of the 1994 film Forrest Gump. Said to be haunted by at least 2 vengeful ghosts, the wife and the rival lover of shipping merchant Francis Sorrel, who built the house in the 1840s. Francis's wife, Matilda Sorrel, allegedly jumped to her death when she discovered her husband's infidelity. But historical researchers point out that by the time of her reported suicide, in a moment of lunacy, the Sorrel family had moved to another property next door. Oh, those historical researchers always ruining good ghost stories. I'm one of them. I don't claim any high ground here. What am I looking for? Oh, Myrtles. Oh my goodness. Okay, never mind. I haven't posted it yet. Just to forget that part of the video even exists. Legend of the Sorrel Wheat House. course there's no photo. I just want to see what it looks like. Stay with me here, everyone. Oh, okay, it's got a kind of cool color to it. Where was she? I guess from the top, maybe? That's the other question you got to ask. You need to be a historical researcher to ask the question on if somebody actually jumped from the top of a 2-story house, would it kill them? So many ghostly legends. Sorry, I don't mean to laugh at any of that, but some of the ghostly legends, they talk so prominently about jumping from the top of buildings because it's so dramatic, right? And that they've never asked the question, well, would it kill them, or would they have just like twisted their ankle or something? And skip that. I want to come right to here. Sorry for any San Diego fans. Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. Now, the reason I wanted to come to this one is I've actually visited the location. So this is one of the most famous ghost photos in history, and it's the Madonna of Bachelor's Grove. Now, if you want to see, I have it part of a list. It's funny enough that this is the link that came up because that's exactly where I want to go. So there's a list here, ghost photos. Can't wait for the shop to reopen. And it's not number 1. There's Myrtle's Plantation. I was looking for that earlier. And there's the Madonna of Bachelor's Grove. So cemetery picture taken in 1991. The person who took the photo, it was like a wide shot of the entire burial ground. This is a zoomed in version of that photo. So yeah, I've actually visited a very hard place to find. If you're not familiar, it's kind of a remote location. The mob used it as a dumping ground. Guys like Al Capone, because it's just outside of Chicago. Has earned a reputation of the most haunted graveyard in the United States. So that's most everything. Thanks to more than 100 documented sightings. Now, I don't believe fully that graveyards are haunted just because of the fact that they don't have that kind of energy. But being a dumping ground for the mob, most likely an execution site. The fact that there was a town, a pioneer town, most likely nearby, that add to it. During the 1950s, an outbreak of vandalism at the remote site, several people claimed to have seen an entire phantom farmhouse shimmering above the graveyard, which receded as they approached it. That is a very over-the-top experience. I tell you, sometimes when you hear a ghost story, you have to ask the question, could it be legit? Just from the description of what they're saying had happened. And when you hear something like that, somebody once told me that ghosts did the dishes for them. And I was like, I wish that was true. I hate doing the dishes. But it's probably not. Same thing with shimmering phantom farmhouses. That's just my personal opinion. Others say they have seen the ghost of a farmer and his plow horse. Now there's something. The farmer died when he was dragged to near. What, both of them died? The horse as well? Okay, again, maybe a little over the top. I don't know. If this is coming from people who have done vandalism in the 1950s, I'm gonna question this entire paragraph. That's just me. Some people driving the roads in the cemetery and I have reported encounters with a phantom 1940s gangster-style car. Now that has some validity. I mean, Al Capone. This was after Al Capone, but still the mobsters of the day using the remote location, the fact that it is already a burial ground, so who's going to look for a couple of extra bodies thrown in there? I think like a murderer sometimes. Others claim to have crashed into the phantom car at the sharp curve in the road, but after the shock had passed, there was no damage and no other car. So, future strange news segment. 1991, this was Chicago Sun-Times newspaper ran a celebrated photograph taken by a visitor to the graveyard. So they actually posted it into the newspaper. The form of a woman sitting on a gravestone, part of a paranormal researcher team. The woman claimed that the lady was not visible, the Madonna was not visible when the photo was taken. You can believe that. figure in the photo has been known as the Madonna of Bachelor's Groves. The fact that the major newspaper posted it back in a time when I think newspapers were more well respected. Leave it at that. Is interesting because I think they would have actually tried to research it a bit to see if it was just a obvious fake. Maybe looked at the negatives, which is what you would have done in the time before digital cameras. And maybe linked to the legend of the White Lady, the ghost of a woman buried next to her young child, and who's said to walk through the graveyard on nights of the full moon, with her infant wrapped in her arms. She kind of looks a little defeated, so maybe, I don't know. There's no infant. Maybe she put her down somewhere in his grave. I don't know. All right. Last location I'm going to cover. If you go see this article if you want to read more. I'm only doing like 3 things just for time, but there's 7 on here, and I already skipped San Diego. I'm going to skip Gettysburg, which no, I'd rather do New Orleans. So I skip Gettysburg, skip St. Augustine, Florida, and that's it. So come read those if you're interested, but let's just focus on this one. Now, what's in the photo here? This is, of course they didn't put a name. I think this is the, this is the LaLaurie house. Okay, I did recognize it because I've been to New Orleans. I did the ghost tour there. And I'm going to tell you, I mean, the guide we had was a very nice guy, but not the best storyteller. And I always look for that when I go to locations. A tour in Boston, Ghost and Gravestones one, had one of the best storytellers. And I've seen many over the years, of course, with the tours that I do. But the LaLaurie house was covered. And the stories of New Orleans, it doesn't matter if you're not a storyteller. I mean, they're interesting. A history of such a place, it's going to be interesting. The LaLaurie house, which I assume will be covered in a second. So I want to read this. Paranormal has a distinctive local flavor in New Orleans. It's the history of the place for sure. You want to, this could be the most haunted city. I don't know. You take Savannah on for that one. Vies with Savannah. There you go. Title of most haunted. I swear I didn't read that. One of the city's most infamous haunted houses is the LaLaurie Mansion in the French Quarter. The mansion is the former home of Madame LaLaurie, a wealthy widow, prominent socialite. So in April of 1834, after a fire in the house, rescuers found bound slaves in a secret torture chamber in the attic they'd been horribly tortured over a long period, and there were signs that others had been murdered there. When the discovery became known, the house was raided by the outraged mob of citizens, and Madame LaLaurie fled the city. Later occupants of the building have claimed it is still haunted by the ghosts of the victims. I want to mention a couple quick things about the LaLaurie house. They were horribly tortured, stuck into cages, like terrible, terrible stuff. And this is back in the time of slavery. So you might be wondering, well, if they tortured slaves, why would the townspeople raid the house and they wanted to kill Madame LaLaurie for what she had done? And the thing is, this is very little talked about. I'm not going to get political anyway. This is just me stating historic fact, is that New Orleans, their slaves were more servants for the family. And it was not fair, and I'm not justifying it any means. I think it's terrible that they had the slaves, but the slaves were treated as a part of the family in a way. So that's the reason why the house was raided, because the townspeople felt that the treatment of these slaves was disgusting, and for that, Madame LaLaurie would have been killed, but she fled. And where she ended up remains a mystery. There is a movie. That's the other thing I want to mention, if you guys are interested. It's called the St. Francisville Experiment. Not the best reviews. But I watched it. I loved it. I thought it was interesting. So it's kind of a low budget thing, but I thought they did a good job. Is there any shots? No, just the cast. So anyways, these paranormal investigators that go into this house in St. Francisville, Louisiana, which is a couple hours from New Orleans. And the idea is that this is the house that Madame LaLaurie fled to. Doesn't say here, but anyway, that this is the house that Madame LaLaurie fled to, and that the ghosts of the people she tortured and killed followed her there. So that's the ghost that haunted place. So it is definitely worth watching, just for fun. I'm sure you guys can find it. I'm not going to add any more to that. St. Louis Cemetery number 1. New Orleans' reputation for the dead not staying in their graves. Now, cemeteries in New Orleans, if you haven't been, is worth the price of admission. This one here is in a bad neighborhood, so you got to go during the day and preferably with a group or a tour, not by yourself. I had an experience there that I won't talk about that kind of disturbed me and realized that I'm glad I went with a group. But yeah, the most famous grave is Marie Laveau, the historical queen of voodoo, the voodoo queen. The grave is interesting. Voodoo enthusiasts come there to pray to her. They'll put an X on the stone to, I think it's the honor, and they'll leave her offerings as well. It's all a voodoo thing. Myrtle's Plantation, actually that's in St. Francisville, which is related to the movie that I just mentioned. So Myrtle's Plantation, that's the photo of Chloe. It's one of the ghost photos right there. Chloe, the servant who supposedly killed her master's children. But again, there's a legend that's not true as far as I'm concerned. If you get those historical researchers involved, you can easily pull it apart. I'm not going to get too in detail of that, but yes, Myrtle's Plantation, definitely look it up. I don't think I posted an article on that yet. I have not. I will make sure to get that up soon. I have an article on it that actually breaks down Chloe. There is one thing you can watch. This is one of my previous podcast videos that I'm hoping to bring back. Ghostly History. Sorry. Please enjoy a little ghost. So Ghostly History. It's still on YouTube if you wanna watch it. This is the talk of Chloe and whether she's real or not. There's also pictures and such. That's the Tunica tribe and a swamp. Tunica Indian burial ground. So that's why one of the reasons why they think it's so haunted is that they think the house was placed on an Indian burial ground. 12 ghosts haunting it, including Chloe. This, again, I don't think Chloe ever existed, but that's just me. The ghosts of her victims, the mother and daughter, not two daughters, trapped inside a mirror in the main house. That's interesting. Now, this one's cool. This is cool in a dark history kind of way. The ghost of a late owner is set to haunt the main staircase. He died in 1871 after being shot by a stranger who approached the house. So it was nighttime. He was on the inside of the house. He heard somebody calling from the darkness outside, and he went outside, and it was this mysterious person who was never caught who shot him from the darkness. So imagine going outside, you don't see anybody or maybe a shadow, and then gun goes off and you've been shot. So he was shocked, and all he could think to do was crawl inside the house. He started climbing the stairs, got to the 17th step, according to this, and his wife found him, and he died there. So it is said that William Winter's phantom footsteps can sometimes be heard on the staircase, climbing to the 17th step before stopping. Creepy. So that was 3 out of 7 of the most haunted locations in the United States. This is a strange news segment. I hope you enjoyed it. Please, if you're watching, subscribe. I need to start building this channel up. If you enjoyed it, subscribe. If you didn't enjoy it, just go ahead and leave. I'm used to it. Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. I will talk to you guys next week.